Hey everybody, it's Matthew of Mr. Domestic. This video is all about me teaching you how to sew a whole cloth knit jersey quilt without any interfacing. What? Mind blown! I started out sewing in the apparel world before I jumped into quilting, and unbeknownst to me, that knit jersey was a hard substrate to conquer. It was the first one that I went after. So I was able to bring a lot of the techniques that I learned in apparel over to the quilting world, and boy, am I stoked about the things that I've been able to make. So this video, I'm going to do a smaller 16 by 16 inch version, just so that you can see the details more closely and the techniques. So before we get into the content, anytime you're enjoying this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Now let's get ready to have some fun together. Yay! So these are the things that you're going to need. For the quilt that I made down on the floor right now, I used 1 yard of 2 different 4-way stitch knits. They happen to be in the Love to Pieces collection that I just launched, and that's all I needed. It's a perfect throw size. And in this video, I'm going to do 16 by 16 as I stated. So I have 1, 2 different 4-way stretch knits, and then I'm using wool batting. Wool batting is the magic answer for being able to do this without interfacing. It has a natural stretch to it. It's pretty stable, and what wool does, if you wash it, like let's say it stretches, if you wash it, then it bounces back to its original state. No other batting will do that. So this is not only the magic of comfort, but it's the magic of durability in the whole cloth knit jersey quilt. You'll also need some spray glue. I'm using Quick Craft Tack. It's a newer one that's out there. It's odorless, colorless, spotless, acid-free, no CFC, and it doesn't gum your needles. And this is my new go-to for spray basting. You'll also need something called woolly nylon, or like maxi stretch thread. It's different than regular thread. It kind of looks like a string of like cotton, like fluffy cotton, that has a natural pull to it, and I use that in the bobbin. Then you'll need traditional thread for your top thread, so whatever color that you want. You'll need a ballpoint or jersey needle, and then you'll need some happiness and some joy and some fun. Okay, so since this might be y'all's first time working with knit, I thought it was important to show y'all how to baste knit with spray. Like honestly, with the wool batting and the knit, as long as you don't pull it as you're putting it on there, you don't need much glue because it's going to stay. So let me spray some. Then with this, I'll put the batting, try to center it. They're all about the same size, so it should fit on there great. And then see, I'm not stretching it or pulling it, but I'm flattening it out right here. So it will all be on there. See? Boom, boom, boom. And then if you wanted to clip the edges, do not pin knit. Knit is not something that you pin because it will create a hole and potential run. Anyone who's ever worn pantyhose, it does something similar. So this side is basted. And then I'll just go ahead and spray this directly onto here. And then this is the directional knit that I'm going to use as my guide to quilt. So I want to make sure that this one is straight on there, otherwise the quilting will be wonky. And that's one tip that I always do with a whole cloth knit quilt, is I'll pick a top fabric that has a direction or a guideline for the quilting, so that I don't even have to measure it or mark it. I just go to town. It makes it a lot easier. So that's all you do. As you can see, there's no buckles, there's no pulling. You essentially let both the fabrics and the batting stay in their natural state, and then it's just going to be a beautiful quilt and you don't have to worry about it. So now we're going over to Felicia for some sewing. So now I am over at Felicia. I have my settings set to the lightning bolt stretch stitch with a length of 3, and then the standard width that it puts on there. And I have woolly nylon in the bobbin, and I have traditional thread in the top. I'm using a Wonderful Ultima, which is a poly. It's a cottonized poly. I love using that on knit because I know it's not going to break. So as you can see, there is a pattern right here. I'm just going to follow the pattern, and this quilts so easily. And as you can see, I have my move it foot, my dual feed move it foot, but anytime you're sewing with knit, in addition to making sure to have a ballpoint or jersey needle, you need to use a walking foot. You can't get over it. So if you don't have one, definitely get one. And then see how it's just pulling on it? It's doing all the work. I'm not doing anything. That's the magic of a walking foot or a move it foot. And it is doing that stretch stitch. This is so exciting. I'll fast forward to the end. Awesome. Now I just wanted to show you the stitch. See? It has some stretch to it. It's not going to pop. And then with the woolly nylon, it's definitely not going to pop here. And with the wool batting, it says that the quilting needs to be at a maximum 4 inches. So make sure to follow that quilting instruction. And now I'm just going to quilt all of it up. This is less than 4 inches. I'm going to follow this one. I'm going to go over every 3, and then I will show you binding once I get done with this. And just like that, the quilting is done. Look at the amazing texture. This is so cool. So now off camera, I'm going to square this up. I'm going to cut a 2.5 inch wide with the fabric strip to bind this, and then I'll come back to Felicia and show you how to bind. So I've squared up the quilt, and now I'm going to bind it. I have a tutorial on binding made easy that I'll link here in a card, and essentially I do the same exact thing with knit. The only difference is I don't press this. I don't press the knit because I don't need to. And it's a lot easier to maneuver without pinning or gluing or any of that. You just essentially let it do its work. And so I have set my machine to the super stretch stitch. If you don't have that stitch, then you can use the straight stitch. That's going to work just fine whenever you do the first stitching, and then for the second stitching, maybe a decorative stitching or a zigzag stitch would work. Also, so one thing about knit, you know what the right side of the fabric is because it will curl towards it. So this is curling towards it. So I'm going to fold it this way, fold it in half, leave, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 inches in excess, and then start stitching. And I'm going to go in probably 1/4 inch and then check it. That's something that I always do. So down, there we go. So I stitch like 1 inch essentially when I do binding, and then this is a double fold binding, and I just want to make sure that this is right, because that would be the worst thing to do, to stitch all the way around and then find out you didn't leave enough room. So without any pull, I just want to make sure that it folds over naturally, and it folds over that stitch line so I know it's good to go. And now I'm just going to stitch all the way around it using the super stretch stitch. I'll show you when I get to one corner what I do, but I'll fast forward most of this. So enjoy this and fast forward. Okay, now I'm to the corner, and just like the machine binding made easy video, I pivot, and I have 1/4 inch left, sew at a diagonal, lift the foot, and this is all in that video, so if I'm going too fast or you can't see it, then that's a great explanation of it. Fold it up and then down. I do exactly the same thing. The only thing with knit fabric, and I think I've said this a couple times in a couple different ways, is you don't want to pull it beyond its natural state, because then the whole thing would get wonky. You let this magic foot do all of the work. So now I'm going back, and I'm going to stitch at 1/4 inch. I'll fast forward all of it until I get to the front. Okay, now I have excess on both sides. They're about to join, right? And this is one thing that I do differently than that video. I don't cut it on the bias. I just cut it straight. Since this is knit and it's rather particular compared to woven, I don't want to add like one other element to try to make perfect here, and you really can't tell with knit. So I'm going to pinch it here. I know that I'm going to sew it probably at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I put those together and I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch. Don't cut your fingers, folks. Oh. So just cut that straight. And now I take these, put right sides together. And then put this here. And then stitch it. And hopefully this should be perfect. We'll see. Boom. Yes, indeed, it's perfect. So you could press that with a steam iron, but since knit is forgiving, I don't find the need to do that right now. And then just continue until you get to the end. And then I'm going to get you started on the front just so that you can see it. And it's exactly the same as a woven quilt. See, we've already tested it. So I just want to make sure that that goes over the stitch line, and I am going to use the same stitch, the same super stretch stitch at a length of 3, and I'm going to edge stitch right there. And I might be weird, but I love eyeballing an edge stitch instead of changing the foot. It just makes me feel like my vision is good. And then I am going to get you to the corner, show you what I do with the corner, and then I'm going to let y'all run free and make these on your own. What an awesome like baby quilt, a cuddle quilt, a kid's quilt. Like really, anyone deserves this kind of luxury in their life. So I'm getting to the end. Here. And as you can see, I'm pulling on it. I'm creating that triangle right here. Get to here. Okay, so I'm almost to that point. And I'm going to grab my seam ripper. I use my seam ripper for so many things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this over. Get this here. Right? And then I use my seam ripper. And I do this a lot with like wovens too. I'm just going to press it down. Do not sew over the seam ripper. You would break a needle. So make sure you get it behind it. But then, and then do it until it catches on this one. And then you pivot. And that is my little trick on how I get the corners done on knit and on essentially any substrate whenever I do not feel like gluing. So now I'm just going to go all the way around. I'll do it in fast forward just so that you can see it, because I think fast forward is fun. But then, that's all there is to it, folks. Ta-da! This is finished. Look, I'm going to totally tell Helena that I made her owl hoo-hoo a blanket, and she's going to be so excited. But now you can make one any size that you want. So, yay! This is definitely a yay moment. Like, this is not like a tug of war blanket or quilt, but it's definitely the most cozy, luxurious, and easy quilt that you will probably ever make. So, if you enjoyed this video, got some loves or some tips or some tricks or two, then make sure to give it the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Keep it positive, y'all. Mr. Domestic out.